welcome to ChessFest Academy number 12. We are going to start looking at some of the strategy that you need to go beyond somebody who just knows how the pieces move and the basic rules of the game to a developing player who has a little strategy under their belt. So we're going to do this by looking at opening strategy first, and the best way to do that is to learn an opening called the Ruy Lopez. Ruy Lopez was an 18th century Spanish monk who wrote one of the first books on chess, and he described this opening in it. And let's play through the Ruy Lopez, and we're going to go nice and slowly. It's actually only 2.5 moves we're going to play, but it'll take us a while because we're going to look at the strategy behind each move. Now, when you start a chess game, something I see young players often do before they learn opening strategy is they'll say, move out their A and H pawns, and then take their rooks out and move them to the center, which takes a whole lot of moves and doesn't do what you want it to. You have to think about what the pieces are good at. Rooks are great on open ranks and files, which means they're going to be more useful later in the game. You might want to set them up kind of in the beginning of the game, but you're not going to have them out. An important part of the board is the center. Primarily these 4 central squares, but the center of the board in general. And one way to demonstrate this, perhaps you can go out in a hallway, if you're in a chess club with your teacher, and have one person stand in the center of the hallway, and you play that game like sharks and minnows where you try to get past the person. When you stand in the center of a hallway that's, say, 10 feet wide, it will be very difficult to get past the person. But if that person were to stand over against the side and stay there, it would be incredibly easy. Everyone could just walk right on by with no trouble. So the center is where all the pieces need to move through and where a lot of the action takes place. So one of your strategies for an opening of a game is to try to control the center. And there's this tension in the center of the board, this give and take. And so that's why White's first move in the Ruy Lopez is E4. E4 is the single most common opening for chess games. White's first move, E4. And look at what it does. He is on E4, so he's in a sense controlling that square. He's on it. He's also attacking, if you look at the 2 squares, he's attacking D5 and F5. And so he has 3 central squares that he's putting some pressure on where he is or where he's attacking. Now, he's also threatening to become a passed pawn to jump up to E5 and be in Black's territory. But let's look a little more first at E4. You notice something else that does. It allows now White can take out his bishop along that diagonal. If you remember, the knight is the only move that can pass over other pieces. So the bishop needs to have this F bishop, this light square bishop, needs either the E or the G pawn moved out of the way so he can get into the game. And that is number 2 in opening strategy. Number 1 was try to control the center. Number 2 is you want to develop those bishops and knights early in the game. And there are many reasons for that, but one will just say they're useful. So get them out and into play. It also allows you to connect your rooks later in the game and so on. But for now, just think, I want to get my bishops and knights out. I'm going to try to control the center. E4 helps me get that started, and it also helps you to get that bishop out. It does also open a diagonal for the queen, but generally you want to keep your queen back until those bishops and knights are developed. One problem you can have in opening is if you take the queen out right away, say on your second move here for White, Black is going to go after that queen, and you'll find yourself in your first 10 moves, you've moved the queen 6 or 7 times just to keep her safe from attack. So let her hang back a bit. She'll get her moment to shine, don't worry. So E4 does all of that for White. Black responds with E5 in the Ruy Lopez opening. Black plays E5. You notice that stops the advance of White's pawn. White cannot now pass the pawn to E5. Those soldiers, remember, are butting shields against one another. And where White is attacking D5 and F5, now Black's pawn that he's moved out is attacking D4 and F4. You see those? So Black is also trying to control the center. And you notice it does the same exact thing for black that it did for white. He can now take his dark square bishop out. He's opened up that diagonal, and he's opened a diagonal for the queen. So trying to control the center, making it so you can get those bishops and knights out. White responds with knight f3. And again, that does those two things that you want to do. You notice right away, I'm sure, that he's attacking that black pawn on white's next move, unless black does something about it. He's going to lose that pawn. White will gain material and also control of the center. This also develops a knight, remember? Controlling the center, developing bishops and knights. So this does two of those three things you want to do. We haven't gotten to the third one yet. Now, black doesn't want to lose that pawn. He doesn't want to lose his control of the center. He definitely can't move that pawn, though, so he defends it with a mirroring move. Black does knight c6. And you can see, 1, 2 to the side and up, that knight is defending the black pawn on e5. So if, and this would never happen because it would be bad, if white were crazy and went ahead and just took that pawn, he would lose a knight. And we talked about the point values of pieces. You would not take 1 point and lose 3 unless it did something else very special for you, gained you in position. That would be a sacrifice, but this does not do that. So in defending this pawn, black is effectively stopping white from even thinking about taking it. So he's securing his control of the center, and he's developing a knight. All things you want to do in the opening. The last move here for the Ruy Lopez opening, white takes this light squared bishop, and you know we're moving the light squared bishop even before I tell you where we're moving it. Why? That's right, because only one of the bishops can get out. Your dark square bishop for white is still blocked in by the B and D pawns. He can't move. So if I tell you you're making a bishop move, it must be the light square bishop now. And also I'm going to tell you it's bishop b5. And if you look at b5, it's a light square. And so you can just slide him along that diagonal to b5. And you can see how this move puts a little tension on the knight who's defending the pawn who could be taken by the knight. And this is how chess strategy works. You end up with very, very complex positions sometimes where this piece is tied to this one and all the pieces are connected in different ways, and that if you disturb that balance by moving something incorrectly, you can throw off your game and set off a chain of captures that you won't like. So he's developing the bishop, which is something you want to do in the beginning of the game. The bishop isn't doing too much to control the center. He was already attacking, say, c4 in the center. But by putting pressure on the knight there, it's definitely helpful. Now, it is black's move. The most common response here for black. Now, that's the end of the Ruy Lopez. And so you should probably pause the video now and just play through those moves. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. Play through the Ruy Lopez several times as white, as black, switch it back and forth until you have that memorized. It's a very obvious opening, a very easy one to memorize and have in your repertoire. And then when you go to just play friendly games, instead of opening with whatever, you can say to your opponent, perfectly fine, hey, you want to play the Ruy Lopez? And start off the game this way and then take it from there. The most common response for black here is a6, giving white the choice between, say, taking the knight, swapping the knight for a bishop at 3 points each. It's an even swap. Or let's have white do this, retreat back to a4. Black then has his own set of choices, but for fun, let's have him do knight f6, attacking white's pawn, which is currently unprotected. Although he probably doesn't want to take that. That would throw his knight out somewhere he doesn't really want him to be. I do that because I want to show you the third thing that white can do here in the opening, which is a big part of opening strategy. So there are 3 parts of opening strategy. The first one we said was try to control the center. Second is develop your bishops and knights early. And the third thing you want to do is castle. And white, it's white's move now, and he's ready to castle. To which side? To king side. He has all the rules of castling met here. We'll review those really quickly. The two squares there, F1 and G1, are vacant. He can actually pass through them. The bishop and the knight have been moved out. Also, if, say, black's white bishop were on this diagonal, then white would not be able to castle if F1 was under attack, because the king cannot pass through an attack square, but that's not the case, so he meets that rule. And he hasn't moved king or rook yet, so he meets that rule of castling. This is a good time at the beginning of the game to castle. Do you remember which piece you touch first when you're going to castle? That's right, it's always the king. And remember, if you're playing like online chess and you grab that rook and move him over to F1, you just made the move rook F1 and your move is over. So if you're playing online chess or in a tournament, you definitely want to abide this practice and grab your king first, move him over to G1, and then you hop the rook over to the other side of the king. This sets up a nice defense for white early in the game. So controlling the center, knights and bishops out, and then castle. Right here, you see these three pawns in front of that white king there? This is a good solid pawn structure, and you want to, this is like that thing, set it and forget it. You want to set up this defense and just leave it. You don't want to shuffle these pawns unless you absolutely have to. Leave these pawns like this during the opening and probably well into the middle game. This knight is doing a nice job for you here, protecting H2. The king and the rook are both protecting F2. The king alone is protecting H2, which is, G2. The king alone is protecting G2, which is a weakness, but you can easily remedy that. So in the opening, bishops and knights controlling the center and castling, and you'll be on your way to a good game. Let's try setting up that Ruy Lopez, memorize both white and black's moves, and then maybe try playing a few moves beyond that. See if you can get black to castle. You need to move out that bishop first, right? So enjoy the Ruy Lopez, your first opening, and we'll see you next time here on ChessFest Academy.